While filming the Disabled Hikers Lost in the Woods episode, it became painfully obvious that the subject itself was far too massive to explore in a single episode. While wrapping up episode 5, I stated that the Lost in the Wilderness scenario was a subject I studied in great detail from the time I was a boy to the present day. Therefore, this subject would deserve further exploration in future productions. So as promised, I will be revisiting this topic from time to time, creating a sub-series aptly named The Lost in the Woods Experience. This series will be designed to explore the many facets of the Lost in the Woods experience, including navigation, survival, and our subject for today, search and rescue services.
There are about 50,000 search and rescue missions per year in the United States. So I wanted to sit down with Northeast Search and Rescue and talk about this a little bit. So with me today I have Ken Porter, Operations Officer and Canine Handler, and Heather Morris, Canine Handler for Northeast Search and Rescue. Thank you for joining me today. So
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it. Can you tell us a little bit about what Northeast Search and Rescue does?
Northeast Search and Rescue, our main goal is to help people in distress. Northeast has been in business 46, 47 years now, and answer calls for wherever people need help.
What location?
We will do tri-state area. We went down to Harvey 2 years ago in Texas, then to Katrina.
So you pretty much go wherever you're called.
If they need us, we will go.
Right. Heather, how long have you been with Northeast?
Just almost 4 years now I've been with Northeast.
How about you, Ken?
It's a little over 10 years now.
How big of an area does Northeast Search and Rescue basically cover? I mean, I know you get called out, but like, what's your main area?
The 14 counties in Pennsylvania. Usually it's up to 2 to 3 hours away because there are other search and rescue teams around. They're going to, at times of the essence, they'll call the closest team.
Right.
So, but if it's in an hour to 2, we're normally the team they'll call, and then we'll call on other teams to assist us too.
Heather, how many calls a year do you answer?
We average, I think the past 2 years, about 42 a year. Yeah, somewhere between 40 and 50.
And how many people do you have in the organization itself?
Well, we have 14 or 15 dog handlers. We have 24 full-time volunteers that are with the organization. And now we have 9 applicants who are wanting to join, and they're going through their preliminary stages where we evaluate the dogs and they're getting their certifications together.
Do most of your search and rescues turn out to be like success stories?
Unfortunately, no. All right, so yeah, we have to see now a lot of our calls are drownings, so it's going to knock it down. Suicides, so we don't even have a chance of getting a rescue against a recovery. And then because of the system in Pennsylvania, there's no standard way to call search and rescue. It goes into the local fire department, police department, or state police. They'll determine who's going to call. It's normally a local fire department that go out searching. When they can't find it, then they'll call search and rescue. So, unfortunately, that really cuts our chances down of getting a rescue.
How many calls are water rescues? Because I noticed that you guys train a lot for water rescues.
We do well.
Not so much rescue, but recoveries.
Oh.
That's usually what we're called in for. I think there's only one area, which is Portland, that does actual water rescue because they're right on the river. They have their own team for water. We would do the rescue, but usually the time to get there is of the essence, and those people are way down the river by that time.
Right.
So them getting on the river as fast as they can, usually they're the ones that are going to be rescuing in this area anyway.
I noticed, I saw a news article about you guys training for ice rescues. and so forth. What is that like?
It's cold. We don't train for, per se, for not an ice rescue team. But we support then the fire departments who are really, have more members trained in it, that are closer to respond. So when they need assistance, that's what we will do. That's why we take that kind of training.
Right. I used to go spelunking when I was younger. Have you ever had any underground rescues, mining, anything like that?
Not since I've been on the team. We haven't done anything underground. I could say we were in areas where there are old mine shafts. Tamaqua, which is not my favorite area anymore. But they had 1 or 2 missing persons, but I know the one that I was there for, it's actually my first search that I had gone on, and Ken actually had been up in the area where there were mine shafts, and he had his older dog, which he was very thankful for, because you could just be walking and there's a hole, or you don't even see a hole.
Oh, wow.
So we did something very neat with that, and we had a robot that we lowered down into the mine shaft that was in question that maybe the guy fell down into. You remember how many feet that was?
It was over 450 feet deep.
Wow.
And then they built us this cool little truck thing, and it, had these wheels, and it got over all the rocks, and they had a camera on it, so they could put, they put it down, and it didn't work as well as we'd expected. I think we probably broke 3 of them. But it was very cool because we trained rope rescue, and we weren't rescuing anybody, but we had to set up a whole procedure to go down the mountain because this thing was huge and heavy.
Right.
So we sent it down like a zip line, and so it was very neat thing to do.
I've often thought when I was in these caves, if I got stuck, how would I ever get out? So it was always a very interesting part of the psyche to kind of overcome to even go into those places.
Yes, yes.
We have a saying in search and rescue, there's one person in danger, we're not going to put anybody else in danger.
Right.
So we would, something like that, we'll call somebody in. We will not do that.
Do you have an outside team for that you would literally rely on for that?
Yes, and we look for local resource, fire department, state police, they'll know who to call.
Okay.
You had mentioned how many searches and rescues there are in the United States. So there's a set protocol across the United States for search and rescue teams. And everybody pretty much handles it the same way. And we're trained through the National Association, through our states, and for search procedures.
Right. How do you guys communicate out in the field?
We communicate radios, hopefully.
It's always a problem. Most radios that we use are going to be line of sight, so if we're searching, we have a team on the other side of the mountain, we're going to be out of communication with them.
Right.
And so with cell phones become our backup.
Do you ever have problems with that, with cell phones out in the field?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
We have a repeater, it's called. I'm not sure about the communications area. It's not my area, but that we put up this huge antenna, and it's supposed to be able to make the radio sound waves go farther. Is that,
Well, it increases the strength.
increases the strength. So,
Which they know.
and sometimes we'll have state radios from the fire department, or we have some of our own that is on the police channel, so they go a lot further in distance and through the trees and all the stuff that we're looking at.
Right.
And it does cause anxious moment in the command center because, like I said before, there's one person in danger. We don't want to put anybody else. So if Heather is out looking and we can't communicate with her, that becomes a problem for us. So we've got to make sure she's staying safe.
Right. The dogs are pretty much used on every call, aren't they?
Yes, probably.
There's 2 that we can think of.
Yeah.
2 searches. Yeah, the answer to that is yes. There's, they called us to, apparently the ones that were calling in the bomb threats to Monroe County Courthouse were using, I guess the prepaid phones.
They were prepaid phones.
And they would break them and throw them into the lake so they couldn't be found and traced to them. And so they called us and said if our dogs can find the phones. We said, no, that's above their ability. So we call it professional dive team to do that. And there was one water rescue that we assisted at that we didn't, obviously the dogs are not going to swim out and get the person, so. But otherwise,
Or the
all our
horses.
calls are dog related.
They're an amazing tool. They really are. So who does the training on these guys?
The training is the responsibility of the dog handler. We have trainers on the team. I cover the trailing dogs, and we have a volunteer named Nina who does all human remains detection training. And Ken is fantastic because he has a lot of just experience, and he's seen what the dogs actually have to do in the real world, because that's our biggest obstacle, is to train as if we were on a real search, and have the dogs feel that it's that important, you know. But for the dogs, luckily, they think it's a game. It's hide and seek. They get a toy, they get a treat, and they are happy as anything to go out and find that person and, you know, follow them back and make sure they're okay. So,
How long does it take to train a dog for this job? I know it takes a long time for a service dog, so.
Actually, it takes us longer to train the handlers than the dogs. The dogs are doing what comes natural to them. Okay, it's training the handlers because they need much more skills than just watching a dog. When we find subject in the woods, our job's only half done, and we have to get them out. So they need to know, and they need to know navigation, they need to know first aid, they need to know a lot of different skills. So it takes a while to teach the handler, but it's going to be between 1 and 2 years.
Now, I know there are certain things that I look for with a service dog. Are there certain things that you look for this job as well, like in particular?
Yes, you hear her whining before? She's bored. She wants to work. So the average household dog that just lays around, lays at your feet, is probably not going to be the search and rescue dog that you want. We want the high energy, the high drive. If there's sometimes in a search, they're going to have to work for hours in the extreme heat, the extreme cold, and they need to have that drive to keep going.
Right. When you start training them, how old do they have to be?
oh, well, they can be imprinted as soon as 4 weeks old on human remains. And then usually by the time the handler gets them at 8 or 9 weeks, we start them right away. We do little puppy runaways, we tease them, get them to want to chase us, and you know, it's a lot of fun. I was looking forward to doing it with a new dog, because I did not bring her up from a puppy. She was trained at 16 months, we started. So to me, anyway, I see a big difference in the, number one, the drive, because she's not constantly wanting to go work. To her, it's more of a serious job. She takes it seriously. This is not like fun, Mom.
Right.
Like, we're out here to help somebody. And, you know, she has, to me, when I see all the other dogs, she has a little bit different personality and outlook on it. You know, and sometimes I thought, well, I don't know if you're going to be a good search dog, because she really was like, you want me to find a person? Why? but yeah.
We played hide and seek when we were young, and it was a game that we liked playing. It's not much different with them. They loved the game of it, as I think I had mentioned before.
That's how we try to get
it's a game
volunteers to hide for us. We try to get them to come out and join us in training, so we have new subjects, because the dogs are always finding teammates, because we don't have a lot of outside sources to coming in and helping. So that's kind of how we put it. You know, it's hide and seek, and it's a lot of fun.
What's the average response time from when you get a call to actually be there on the ground looking?
Well, we've trained our members that they need to be ready to go. Okay, so normally most people will be out the door when they get the call within the first 10 minutes. And then obviously it's going to depend on where the search is. We could travel 15 minutes, we could travel 3 hours.
Right.
So, you know, the response time is going to vary. And then our members are not just in Stroudsburg, they're 25, 30-mile radius around it. So depending on where the search is, some are going to get there faster than others.
If the search is in your basic area, sounds like you could be there within an hour.
Oh,
We'll be there under an hour. Yep.
That's great. Heather, last year I saw there was a rescue in the Pocono Record. Could you tell us about that?
that was a hunter who had gotten lost in an area that he was very, very familiar with, like hunted there for 20 years. So what they did was there was 3 of them, and they all took a different path. And when they were supposed to come and meet, this man did not meet at the junction where they were supposed to be. So they called, the fire department was there. The man actually called in, but then his cell phone died. So they said he was very nervous, which wasn't like him. So they were really concerned. And so we got out. They took us to a spot where we could walk into where his hunting trail was. And so I got her ready. We went out. I was with some other people, the hunter that was with this gentleman. And she, all of a sudden, you know, as they're giving me this information as we're walking out, is, you know, throwing her head up and trying to pull me over into the woods. And I said, wait a minute, do you think he's walking out? And they said, oh, no, we don't think he's going to be walking out. He's way in there, you know. So I said, well, my dog is saying different. So we followed her, and there he was. We heard him, we called out, and I said, there's like an embankment over there. And we called out, and we heard him call back. And we were like, oh my gosh. So it was within 10 minutes of getting onto that trail. It was not more than 10 minutes, and I was looking forward to like a 45-minute walk in the rain. So it was very good. You know, if you don't pay attention to your dog, you could miss something like that.
Yeah.
Or if you listen too much to the people who say, no, he'll never make it out on his own. He did. He knew where he was. And so you have to be aware of all of that, and you have to take everything with a grain of salt. And
It was 36 degrees, and by the time Heather got started on her task, it was starting to change over to snow. You have to understand, he's been out there a while, so we all know hypothermia, what's going to happen to him.
Right.
We had to get to him pretty fast.
yeah, he said he fell and he had injured his knee. But he was one of those two. He was like, no, I'm fine, I'll walk out. But he was having a lot of trouble even just standing there. So it was good that they took him with the first responders and onto the ambulance, and he did fine. But so I don't know what happened. That's one of the things we never get the end result, like what happened with the man or the woman or
Right.
the child, like are they okay? Sometimes we get called back for the same person, but so then we get a little bit more of the story.
Right.
But for the most part, you know, for me it's hard to walk away and not know how everything turned out, you know, so.
That must be very hard.
Yes, and the searches we do when we don't find the person, that's the worst.
Right. I'd like to touch on something you talked about, repeat rescues.
Yes. Usually autistic children and dementia patients. You know.
That's something I wanted to ask both of you, I believe, about rescuing people with disabilities. Autistic children, Alzheimer's. One of our friends is deaf, who hikes a lot.
Right.
And wondered, what would you do for a person, a deaf person, for example? What would you do to help this person?
You hope that the dog finds them and brings you to them. And you don't, you know, there's sometimes where you're calling out and they're so far away, they're not going to hear you, or they're in an area where they can't hear you. Anyway, I think the biggest obstacle would be to communicate with them. And like for me, I'm not good at sign language, so I probably would write on there who I was and, you know, we're here to help you. I think I would hope that's a given when we come up on people that are lost and they see the uniforms and the dogs are in, you know, their uniforms.
Are you trained for that kind of thing, though?
We do take a lot of classes as volunteers. I don't think I did as much work in school that I do now.
You guys seem pretty prepared. That's why
we do. We have
pointed
lost
out.
person behavior, where they teach us about different people, different disabilities, and what they usually do in that case. Ken can tell you he found a man somewhere he really thought that not a little old man could go, because they told him he couldn't walk.
Yeah, you can't, as you've touched on before, you can't listen to people. They're, what the wife will tell you, well, he can't go more than a mile, and he's 3.5 miles out. So adrenaline can do a lot of things to people. But we have people come in for instructors for autism. We know, so we know what to do when we find a child like that. One of our handlers did find a child with autism, and he called out to him. He saw him. The dog found him. Called out to him. He was in the middle of a briar patch, and he called out his name. Said, "Are you who we were looking for?" And the kid says, "No." So he had to go in and get him because he had to go do so. But we do train, and we are taught how to handle people with disabilities.
That's one thing that kept coming up over and over again. And I hike a lot. What happens if I break my leg? Are they going to be able to, deal with my conditions and so forth? And even with my chronic pain condition, I think about that a lot. Like, you can't just strap me to a backboard and carry me out. It's like, so what would you do to address like somebody with my condition?
Yeah. The biggest thing that we have is we have the collective wisdom of other people, and we call in for advice. So if Heather finds somebody like that out in the woods, she'll call command. And I can't take at this point to tell you how wonderful fire departments are, police departments, the state police. It's not just a job for them. If these people that go out there, they put their life on the line and spend all this volunteer time for finding someone they don't even know. And they're just a wonderful, wonderful group of people. So, but to go back to your question, is that we'll call into command. And if we don't know the answer, and we don't know how to handle someone like yourself, we'll find out. We'll get on the phone, someone with that group of people will know who to ask, and we'll get the answers.
So you guys have like quite a network of people behind you backing you up.
Yeah, so again, just about every search we're at, there's going to be police, there's going to be state police, and there's going to be fire companies.
Right.
And, they've been doing it a long time, and someone in one of those groups will have an answer, or know where to get the answer.
Right.
And we always have an ambulance standing by, and we utilize the all-terrain vehicles as far as being able to get the person out of the woods. If they were injured, like if your leg was broken, I wouldn't want to strap anybody to a backboard unless they had a neck or back injury, just because it is very cumbersome to carry somebody out. I mean, we watched them carry the gentleman that we found out, and it was hard for them. They had to go uphill, and then they change, they rotate through who carries and the section that they're carrying, because that weight is not always distributed evenly.
Right.
So, and sometimes you have to pass it, and go through like a chain of people to get it up a certain area. So the all-terrain vehicles are amazing, and they can get through stuff that doesn't have a path. So that, I think, is one of our great resources. Also saves us time with our dogs.
Right.
Because if we have to go to a certain area, our dogs will just hop on that ATV with the rider. We'll get on there, and they'll take us, up a trail, and they'll say, all right, here's your area, and we have it on the map, and then we search that certain area.
Nice.
Well, Northeast doesn't have any ATVs, but I go back again to the fire departments. These are people that have jobs. They're out in the middle of the night. They know they got to go to work the next morning, but they're there waiting for us. How can you help? And they'll have the ATVs.
Right.
They're just a spectacular group of people.
Yeah, the volunteerism, I find, is amazing behind your organization. What are the requirements for joining your organization?
The biggest requirement is to want to be able to help other people, and then to have the time to do it. As Heather talked about, not being the school wasn't this demanding on some of the things, so you need to have the time. And then there's some requirements that we need. You need to go first aid and CPR. Do you need to know NIMS courses? You need to know quite a bit navigation. So there's a lot of things that we require then. But the biggest thing is you want to be able to help people.
Do you have any physical requirements? I mean, could I even volunteer?
There's a role for everybody somewhere. Like Heather was talking about, when we get to a search, we set up our command trailer. It may be nothing more than just sitting there answering radios. There's many, many different roles, and you don't have to be a dog handler to be part of search and rescue.
Right.
Yes, we actually
need a lot of support.
We need a lot of support.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm always looking for a job, so.
Come on out.
Yeah. What advice do you have for the people that you will be rescuing in the future?
Be prepared. There's a lot of people that go out for a day hike that don't come back at night because they got lost. And they have not an ounce of food, water's not left. They don't have anything, no backpack, no anything that's going to help them be able to spend the night out in the woods comfortably. Not even comfortably, but just to be okay. You know, and especially if like even in the summer, if they went swimming and it got a little chilly at night and they're lost, they can be hypothermic very quickly. So we try to advise them, you know, make sure you take a whistle. Number one, a whistle is very important because you can yell and yell and yell and not anybody's going to hear you. But if you hear somebody blow a whistle 3 times, you think, whoa, what was that? And so that will touch on a lot of different people, not even just the searchers. So, yeah, I would always suggest, you know, having at least some snacks, extra water, you know, the space blanket, it's a little package. It doesn't take up a lot of room. It's always good to have that, you know, and like I've come up on people with injured dogs or, you know, like the kid got scraped. And so I usually have a little first aid kit, you know, and I think anybody out there should have that. And the biggest thing I would say is if you're going out, not even just alone, but with another person, you need to tell somebody where you're supposed to be going. You know, the kids are big, we're going to go to Johnny's house, and then they're out in the woods, you know, 2 miles away, and nobody knows where they are. So where do you start to look? You know what I mean? So especially with the kids who don't want their parents to know where they are, tell somebody, tell a friend then where you're going to be, because that's very, very important.
And the other thing is that stay put. The second you realize you're lost, stay put. The further you go, the more search area you give us. So if you're lost and you know you're lost, you continue to walk another half a mile. It's not just a half mile we have to check. If you look at the radius on that and what the mathematical equations is on how that's increased our search areas tenfold. And we do programs for children that's called a hug-a-tree. And it's what it teaches them is that when you're lost, just to go, and it's not physically hug a tree, but to go sit under a tree and stay there. Do not move. We will come to you.
That's an awesome philosophy,
Yes.
especially with children, because you know they can wander very, very far.
Right.
And they do.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
And it could increase ours up to 2 days to try and find them, because it's just the amount of area that we have to cover.
Right. There's a lot of survivalists today, or I use that term very loosely, that are going out in the woods with nothing and trying to make shelters and survive off the land. So, have you ever been called out to rescue any of these people?
Yes, we have. Last Memorial Day, we're going off the grid. We can survive by ourselves. Yes, it happens occasionally. There's some crazy reasons we have to go out there and get them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very funny that some people think we've taken classes how to build shelters, how to, you know, what we have available in the environment. And we know mostly what plants are good and bad and that sort of thing. But we carry water filters to, you know, if we get stuck without water, we have something to filter the water for us to be able to drink it. So, you know, those people who think they're going to survive off the land, they just don't need the land. They need a plan, and they need to have some supplies to be able to put forth that plan.
Right.
So.
Right. And yeah, I found that there is a lot of people like just doing this stuff with no training whatsoever. They're just
YouTube can be dangerous. It can be very helpful, but it can also be dangerous.
yeah.
Have you ever heard of the 3, 3, and 3? You can go 3 minutes without breathing, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So even though some of these people don't know what they're doing, we still got a chance to get them.
Yeah.
Because you can go quite a way, quite a bit of time without having some of the basic supplies.
Well, you can have the most, experienced searcher get lost. We had somebody call search and rescue that used to be on the team, and they were in a very hairy kind of area where I wouldn't want to be hiking or climbing the rocks that they were climbing, but they ended up having an issue getting wet and got hypothermic and had to call somebody, and they did actually have search and rescue come out there to get them. It could happen to us too.
Right.
Yeah, it's really it's really not easy, which is why we require so many different certifications to be able to stick with it, do it, and our confidence is in those people that have done those classes, and there's a lot of schooling, and we're always learning.
So it sounds like we're lacking some kind of a 911 or something of that sort that would actually direct people to you.
Yes, and that's what we're trying to propose. If there's a fire, it comes into the 911 center, and the emergency coordinator calls the local fire department. It's for a fire, that's what they're going to do. Again, if it comes in as and sometimes it might not even go into the 911 center in the counties, it may stay local municipalities. But when that call comes in, follow the set procedure, call search and rescue. Again, I touched on it before, there's no system for a town so we're talking about town X, if somebody goes missing. They normally call into who's ever the police authority, whether it's state police or local police, who then turn and call the fire departments. Okay, some of them don't even know about search and rescue, and that's hard to believe in this day and age, but they don't. And it's up to them whether they even want to call us in. And there's some departments that will just call, they'll page out and the neighborhood, the neighboring fire departments to come out and look. And they're not trained in it, most of them, so it lessens the chance. So again, we need to get there fast. We never are upset if we have to get turned around. So you call us at 2 in the morning, we're on the road and we drive an hour and a half, and then it happens to us, we'll get a call, well, we found him. Okay, great, is he okay? Yes. Everybody's happy, we'll turn around and go home. But I think part of the problem is they're afraid to call us until they search. And we're trying to change that mentality, call us immediately. We are trying to work on that, to educate people and trying to get legislation passed that way. And a lot of people think you got to be missing for 24 hours before anything could be done. That's furthest from the truth. If you're missing, call in and we'll come get you.
Funding. Who pays for all this?
We do.
We do.
The individual members pay for everything. We do some fundraising. We do the buckets in front of Walmart. The dogs do bring us some sympathy. People put some money in the buckets. But any expense regarding the dog or personal equipment comes from the team member. Right? The team pays for things like insurance, our boat, that type of thing, the maintenance on the boat. But the bulk of the expense comes from the team members.
And that includes dog training, dog food,
everything.
veterinary care, everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you guys ever charge a fee to people that
Never.
Because I've heard about search and rescues doing that.
It's common out in the Midwest. We do not do that here. That's Northeast's policy. We will never charge.
We take all that on ourselves.
Heather, tell us about Heather's House America.
Well, Heather's House America, my goal is I have for 20 some odd years rescued dogs from shelters. I've seen a lot of good dogs not be utilized. Right. And some of the dogs that end up getting put down could be utilized as a service animal, but they have nobody to put that time into them. So I usually take them in. I will get them from Manhattan or local shelter, sometimes through the veterinarian office where I used to work. And I do a lot of behavior modification with them. We have my dog here is great. As far as new dogs coming in and just showing them to be calm and just putting forth that aura for them to be able to learn. And, a lot of times it take me 6 to 12 months before I find a home, but I'm very passionate about finding that perfect match between the dog and the new owner. I want people who are disabled, children who are suffering a disability or autistic, maybe runaway. One of those things that the runaways was one of my big, passionate things is getting them a dog. And even a dog that's not trained, they might be able to go find that child before anybody gets there. But my goal would be to train them to find their person. And then that way the parents could, if they can't keep a bracelet or the locks on the doors, they can send the dog and the dog will find the child, because that will save so many lives, and we have a lot of veterans in the area. I'm very passionate about veterans, and, I would like the veterans, especially when they come and they help the community, they need a service dog, and a lot of people charge for service dogs. They breed them specifically, which I totally, applaud, because there is great advantages to that. I'm very passionate about finding that perfect match between the dog and the new owner.
You have a special dog right now that you're working with, don't you?
I do. I brought a little pup home from Tennessee that I thought would be a little hound mix, and now he's 80 pounds. He's got like Great Pyrenees in him or something. But yes, we're still in the air. We're training him to do trailing, and we're going to see if somebody comes along, if we can get him into a family that has a need for a service dog or just a companion for a child, we'll do that. But I'm very good at picking the dog and looking at the dog to see what does that dog want to do. And that's what makes me really happy, is to see that dog and how happy the new family is and the dog is. It's just, there's no other feeling like that.
It must be very gratifying when you find that home.
It's like hugging the guy's parents that we found. They're just hugging me. I don't know who these people are, and thank you so much for bringing them home, and it's a feeling that you never ever want to not feel again. You want to do something else that's going to provoke that feeling. So.
Ken, if somebody wanted to donate to Northeast Search and Rescue, do you have a website or anything?
We do. We have nisar.org, and there's a donate button right on our homepage.
Okay, I'll put it on the screen text below as well. And how about Heather's House?
We're working on a website. Right now we have a Facebook page that we're starting, and there's a donate button on there for us.
Okay, and I'll make sure I put that as well down here.
Great.
Thank you so much for coming out.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Terry.
Let's have our story told. Thank you for
Yes.
giving us the opportunity.
Thanks for joining us.
Touch the moon, you can't catch the sky, or see my world through your clouded eyes, or see the nightmares buried in my ever-churning soup. I can't remember how or why I came to realize the visions in my head. Is it me I see so wild and free, or am I wasting time conversing with the dead? I'm not the man that I used to be. There's no returning to the way it was before I had that chance, that ignorance, suburban trance. Yes, I'm miles away from common ground. I'm sure to crash and dread the sound of breaking ties.
We We will not. Something like a cave rescue is specialized, so we're not going to do that. We're going to, yeah, you can't talk right now.